Hello. Well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. My name is Tao from Argo Vision.
I'm Corrado.
The interview is just for the audience of Apply for AI to get to know you and the topic that you will be presenting. And so perhaps if we can start, when you briefly introduce yourself and your current role.
Yeah, so my name is Corrado Monti, and I'm a researcher here in Sentai. I've been working a bunch of on machine learning, on social media and behavioral data. Um, this is my area of expertise in the sense that I've done my PhD in social networks and machine learning applied to social networks and knowledge graph and this kind of human-made networks. And yeah, I've been working mostly on social media, especially from the point of view of computational social science, so answering social science questions from a computation and machine learning point of view. And for that, I've been working on both on methods, the most recent PyTorch and TensorFlow and automatic differentiation framework, and to answer social science questions. That's about it, I would say. Here in Sentai, it's a privately owned research institution, and so we do also industrial application of our research, and that includes, in my case, machine learning applied to human behavior as well, which has obvious economic value for many partners. For instance, like forecasting the behavior of customers, of clients, and so on.
I
So
see.
it's both fundamental research and industrial projects. So that's kind of the mixture that we have here.
Perhaps some examples of real world applications of using AI to study how social media influence opinions and behaviors.
One thing that we've been doing, for instance, is applying graph mining techniques, so probabilistic graphs and estimating graph models in order to provide some assessment of what drives interaction in a social media. And for instance, we discovered that contrary to popular belief, the interactions on social media are not always echo chamber, but instead on some social media like Reddit, there is an increase of cross-party interaction, so of users of different parties that fight each other or at least talk with each other. And that's some probabilistic assessment that we discover with a probabilistic framework that in the end is a classic data mining and graph mining approach. And in order to fit those models to real data, that's where you need to use some automatic differentiation, gradient descent, and all the toolbox that has been developing for deep learning in the end.
And your interest in research is including political ideologies and the role of far right in social media. So, what key insights have you gained in this area and why are they important in today's context?
One thing that has been very crystal clear application of machine learning in social science is the prediction that we've made of Donald Trump supporters on Reddit based on their data 4 years before. So we've been looking at a user in 2012, the year that Obama was elected, and we were trying to predict if that user would turn out to be a Donald Trump supporter 4 years later. And it turns out that there are actually a bunch of signals that allow you to have a surprising degree of accuracy there. We've been reaching a 70% of outcrock. If anybody is familiar with that measure, is not at all low. And the signals that we've been finding on that are also super interesting. Besides the political signals of course, like libertarians, those kind of political areas that constitute Donald Trump support. There are also, like, of course, personal signals, like, of course, sexism is always present, and also a complicated relationship with gender issues and with pornography as well, where all indicative signals of turning out to be a Donald Trump supporters. And of course, there are, like, we've been finding signals of certain economic class, economic privilege, and so on and so forth. So there is a paper for that, but there is a bunch of different signals that we've been capturing that are super interesting to analyze in that regard.
How criteria that will help you decide if I'm a Trump supporter or not?
Well, there are a series of demographic correlations that
Mm,
are super evident. So, uh, already male or female, so you're already a first signal.
mm,
Of course, there are things like education is usually also connected, and that's something that can emerge from your social media as well. Like for instance, on Reddit, we've been looking at this by looking at for instance, the subreddit participation to subreddits of universities or and so on and so forth.
mm.
Um, we've been finding that passion for video games are usually associated with Trump supporters, while passion for board games is associated with non-Donald Trump supporters. Yeah, this is interesting, and uh, of course, like that's not a rule valid for everybody, but there is a
Mm,
correlation. Like, and all these correlations were statistically significant in all the set of Reddit users that we've been looking at.
mm. So how do you interpret that? The board game and the video game.
Well,
How?
there is Yeah, there is a social aspect in a board game that I think that
Mm,
it's partially connected to that. So there is you are used to go around and talk to people, and that usually it's what I've been finding to be
you have
connected.
friends, like human friends.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah,
Mm.
that's kind of yeah.
And I guess a certain kind of people are interested in board game.
No, there is also there is a famous paper from some years ago that was called "Why Liberals Drink Caffè Latte."
Mm.
That is basically analyzing all these weird correlations that emerge when you look at data.
Like,
And many of those are true because they are connected to education or your circle of friends or your how you've been growing up or your socioeconomic status and so on and so forth.
mm.
So yeah, board game people usually are college educated for some reason. Like that's not to understand, but for some reason that's like it. So
And then how accurate are the signals in their prediction?
yeah, we've been comparing different signals. So the one that I've been telling you about are the most predictive, and they reach, let's say, an accuracy. I think that more or less is like that of 70% for a year in advance, which is more than we expected for sure.
Mm.
Uh, we've been trying to look also at other signals like who you've been talking to on Reddit, and that actually doesn't answer too much. It's not a very powerful signal. Like the fact that you talk to about another person that turned out to be a Trumpist actually doesn't tell you become a Trumpist just because you read a comment on Reddit. Instead, we've been finding out that the feedback that you receive from the Reddit community in terms of up votes, down votes. So Facebook, that's a good signal to predict it. Like if you've been going out trolling other subreddits like liberal subreddit or feminist subreddit, that's a clear signal that you're gonna become a Trumpist 4 years later. It's kind of reinforcement. It's also a signal of some that are already your beliefs in a sense. Of course, like going from those beliefs to a
Mm.
political group that has a candidate to the presidency. That's of course 4 years in the making, but those people are already there.
Well, I think not only the people who are American citizen, but also people who care about politics and people who, speak English, educated.
Completely agree. Like those are good examples in the sense that I mean it's hard to sway somebody from their beliefs when they are already uh, clear in their head. So every now and then we tend to attribute maybe like this importance to what is being spammed on social media that actually maybe I mean it's not swaying us too much unless at least if we already have our own ideas. Subreddit's characterized by politically incorrect humor, are predictive of participation to Donald Trump user base.
So do you think that you can predict election from now?
Obvious economic value, so all the people are trying to do that, and there have been many attempts, and the result is no, we can't. Like you can
Oh,
do as best as you can with surveys, and that's a super powerful signal. You can maybe augment the signal of surveys with social media by correcting the bias of classic phone interview surveys. But predicting the election with social media is something that we've been like the community has been trying for 20 years and
but you say you have 70% accuracy.
well, but that's like in hindsight, in a sense, we've been developing a model in 2020 was that looked at 2012 data to predict 4 years later, the election of 2016. But we've been doing that after the fact. So all the cards were already on the table. Still, I believe that it's surprising that only looking at the data from 1 year you can find the signals that will allow you to. But of course, doing that before the election, that's a classic critique that has been made to all the people that were trying to predict elections. Usually, those papers that claim we predicted an election came out after the election, and that's kind of
Do you, outside America, any other country that you also look at their data? For example, Italy?
yeah, we've been doing a series of papers on Facebook advertising, of political Facebook advertising, and for those we looked at Italian data at first regarding migration policies. Like that's something super interesting in the sense that we've been seeing the ads that political parties in Italy were showing to propagate to do propaganda basically on this, noticing that they were, for instance, that they were super demographically targeted. Like if you look at the user base that sees an anti-migration message, usually those are old people, usually much more likely to be male than female, for instance. And we don't know if it's a product of the algorithm of Facebook or if it's a kind of reinforcement mechanism that like those are the people that would like after viewing it, and so Facebook is showing it to them because of that. And just to fully answer your question, we also looked at European level data with it. We've been completely different countries at the last European elections, and looking at Facebook ads in all Europe, which was also interesting because you can see some correlation across Europe between parties and how effective they are in Facebook advertising that are across Europe. Of course, I mean, the US has a lot of data that is easy to use. Also, because they are very politically, they are a simpler country in a sense.
Yeah.
And Europe, I know it, and so that's what I know what I'm talking about. Of course, it's always super interesting to see studies that come from different countries and from different regions of the world, which is something that the community has not been super great in promoting. But in the last year, there have been some improvements on that.
Is there any European country that you find most interesting in their recent election? Germany.
Yeah, I mean, there has been like uh, worrying signals from a bunch of those. Well, in yeah, okay, that's of course my personal perspective. But no, for instance, the results from Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, that's for sure. Like they have been having some local elections. I don't remember in which land, honestly. But where AfD was close to being the majority party, which I mean, one should wonder how did that happen, and see, also considering that now they have a so-called center left coalition in power, but you have this resistance. For instance, instead in Spain there was this huge worry about what's the far right gonna do there with the Vox party, and the last election, like they were projected to win everything and to be a necessary force to have in power. Instead, it didn't happen. So that's I mean, it also depends on the local context and what's happening.
Conspiracy theorist.
No, but I'm always on the like on the conspiracy theory side. I'm
The opposite.
conspiracy theories can be effective in some ways. So let's get if this body language is able to do like views, I have no problem.
There was this movie by Quentin Tarantino, Inglorious Bastard. There was this character, Hans Landa. He was a Nazi investigator, and he said that rumors can be revealing.
Yeah, no, of course there is always a certain truth. Like conspiracy theories is a good application of that. Like rumors that spread with theory. For instance, the chemtrails. That's something that I've been reading a bit about, and there has been some floods in Italy last year in Emilia-Romagna. That meant a widespread conspiracy theory about chemtrails again. So airplanes that are controlled by a secret lobby that induce this kind of like crazy weather. that by releasing substances into the air that like force the weather to flood, which is an obvious conspiracy theory, of course.
Can they do that?
No, like that's something that cannot. It's super science fiction. At the same time, if one look like at a distance to this theory, you see that I mean it's saying that there are a bunch of airplanes that release substances that alter the
Mm.
weather, which is actually true.
Which is true. I saw the
That's
news. Yes.
how climate change is carried on. So
Mm.
it's kind of a lens that is kind of distorting some truth. There is always a kernel of truth in
I
right?
see. Hi for AI. Can you repeat topic?
Sure. Now I will talk mostly about the methods that I've been using to do these kind of things. So in particular, we've been rearranging reusing some of the toolbox of deep learning, especially automatic differentiation frameworks like PyTorch, TensorFlow, and all the machinery that they have in order to fit real data to very complicated models of human behavior that are being written by social scientists, let's say. So with a very simple set of rules that like construct an emergent behavior. And fitting this model to data is super complicated. But in a sense, like fitting very complicated models to real data, that's what deep learning has been doing. So we've been using some of those techniques. Um, yeah, basically we're transforming those models into something that is probabilistic as a likelihood. And in many cases, you can find that the likelihood of this model, so the function that you need to optimize in order to fit them to real data, uh, that function is actually the classic loss of neural networks.
Mm.
So binary cross entropy and so on.
I
And so yeah, that allows us to use a bunch of tools that are being made for something else to use them to fit like economical models, opinion dynamics models, models of opinion formation, and so on.
What are the key takeaway that you expect the audience to leave with after your presentation?
Well, the main takeaway that I would like is that there are bunch of usage possible for these new techniques that are outside what's being what is out there. Like that, these kind of tools, of course, like they are being developed with neural networks in mind, but they are automatic differentiation tools, so you can use them to optimize the gradient of any given function. So the possibilities are we're still discovering those possibilities, and yeah, that's my main message here.
What about you personally? What is your expectation from Typo AI?
I expect to see a bunch of applications of these concepts in domains that I'm not familiar with and that I would like to know. I like to see what these technologies are being used for, like in the real world, and like what the people have been able to do with them, especially with Python, with that is a technology to develop this kind of tools, and so that facilitates the connection with the real world.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the interview. Thank you so much for your time, and
Oh,
I
me
hope
too. It
you
was
have a
nice to meet
nice
you.
day and a nice weekend.
Have a nice to meet you and see you in Pavia then.
Yes, see you in Pavia. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.